Hello, and welcome to our first ever game night here at the Asian American International Film Festival. My name is Winton, and I'm joined by three lovely guests. I'm joined by GJ, Jenny, and Goutham, wow. And what we're going to do today is just kind of go through some of the games that they've brought us, whether they've developed it or are part of the team that helps bring it to life, and then have a conversation about just how video games are now, and in particular, being developers or being part of teams that champion people of color and champion smaller games. So we're actually going to start with GJ's game, Trunk Brook, which everybody can actually play now if they want. Probably not right now because I'm going to try to play it while we talk to GJ. But GJ, could you just do a little introduction of who you are and then a little bit about Trunk Brook?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm GJ. I'm a game developer from the greater New York City area, and I'm the co-founder of the Sheep's Meow, and I'm also one of the co-organizers of the Game Devs of Color Expo. So this is Trunk Brook, and Trunk Brook is a tiny adventure game about hiking during the pandemic. You follow trail places, take photos, make friends, and find lost items.
So what was the inspiration behind doing this game? Obviously, there's some pandemic elements involved.
Yeah, actually, we started developing this before the pandemic happened. It started because we really enjoy hiking. We like being in nature and kind of the stillness that being in nature brings. And so we started developing it. We had to pause for a little bit, and while finishing it, we're like, oh, there's a new reality that's going on right now, and so that's why we updated it to have to reflect, the current time.
Yeah, and I mean, something that I really love about this game is the dialogue. What was the kind of structure that you were thinking of, and where are people going to go if they progress further and further in with some of these characters?
Sure. That's a great question. The main kind of themes of the game circle around kindness, and being friendly to strangers and learning more about them as you go along. So you become a good listener, and you find things actually that they lose, and you're meant to play this over and over again. So you learn a little bit more about them each time you play. And like, for example, I think one of the hikers that you'll come up with soon, they're a runner, and you find out later, like after you get to know them a little bit, that they're having a tough time at work, because everyone's working from home. Their boss is like calling them at 11 p.m. So there's these like weird boundaries that are being crossed, right? That normally wouldn't be. But yeah, and the dialogue just stems from like what people would try to like make like normal conversations with people that you would see once in a while, or new people, with the intention of everyone being nice.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that I really love about this game is that it's so textured. The characters are these really cute, hand-drawn, there's like a certain crayon effect, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there's some of these like photorealistic like pieces, and the forest is these kind of interesting composite. What was kind of the thought process, or as you were building this game visually?
So we wanted the place to feel realistic, idyllic, and familiar, kind of like a memory. It's definitely an idealized version of what hiking is. And the thought process of some of these photos are actually our own photos. So it's a mix of found images and our own photos of places that we've hiked in the past. And we wanted to combine them, kind of like recreating things that we remember and we really enjoyed. And the characters themselves, they're designed in such a way that they're quite separate from the environment. You can see right here, the dog's name is Pepper. Pepper looks just like, her own environment because she's an animal. She's meant to be among nature. But the humans are a little different because they're visitors to the space. So we wanted to make that distinction between the two visually. But still, they feel kind of like almost present, but the space isn't quite meant for them. They're just, they're temporarily.
Yeah. And I don't think the viewers will be able to hear it, but I really love the sound design as well. What was the process of collecting and creating all of the sound bed for this?
We worked with a super, super amazing audio designer and composer. Her name is Josie Breckner. I mean, she was able to understand kind of the mood and the themes of the game, and so that like she created these audio textures that enhance these moments of like being in a very like quiet space. And so it was pretty straightforward. We completely trusted her and her expertise, and I think that worked out for the best.
Yeah. And do you I guess, where do you think kind of this game sits in terms of, do you think you would want people to come back to it post pandemic, or do you think it is kind of a game meant to be played kind of during these times?
So the way the game is designed, it's always, no matter what time of year, if you click on yourself, it'll bring up a phone, and it'll always give you the month of August. It'll be, I mean, I know today's the 2nd of October, but it's always going to be the 2nd of August or the 3rd of August. It's this moment in the month of August. That's what this game is. And the time is always going to be 10 a.m. So in a way, it's kind of like this like segment of this time that happened. So whenever people go back to it, it's more of a kind of a furthering that aspect of it being a memory of a place and a time.
Yeah, I also actually just came up. It tells you that we have to get back to the bus.
Yeah.
And for a while, I was like, "Wait, did I know that we have to get back at this time or something like that?" And what I realized is that it's really more of a suggestion.
Yeah.
um, what was the thought process there? And when we wrap up, kind of for this game, I'll show the little bus animation, which I think is really really cute as well. But what what is the kind of purpose of this kind of occasional reminder to go to the bus?
Yeah, so the game is designed to be short and replayable. So it's about getting better acquainted with these friendly strangers. So you have to come back the next day because the day needs to pass, right, for a new opportunity to get to know them better. And so I guess if we were to talk very like more technically, you can 100% the game in a minimum of 3 hikes. And so some of the conversations that you have with these visitors, you get like a nice little like final kind of message from them once you 100% everything. So you kind of like best friend them in a way. But yeah, it's the bus is like a little poke, but yeah, you definitely don't have to take the bus unless you really want to.
Yeah. Um, was there anything in the development of this game that really stood out to you? Did you have a favorite moment or a not so favorite moment?
Um, let's see. Let me think. I think like this might be very common for a lot of developers, but the QA process took a little longer than expected. Um, since there's so many objects in the game, making sure that everything was working properly right before release, and making sure that our development cycle wasn't too imposing, and that like we weren't our studio doesn't crunch. We don't like we are kind to ourselves and our collaborators. So yeah, so I think some of the most surprises came from the QA testing. Um, and I guess another part of that, what I really enjoyed was the inspiration itself, like being out in nature and trying to think back, and being in these spaces where I can just think and I don't know, relax.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would highly recommend people play this game. You can play it in your browser. And yeah, what DJ was saying is that it is like a really nice kind of break because yeah, it tells you, hey, maybe stop for a second. But then when you come back in, between the visuals and really to me, the sound design is what really keeps me motivated, I guess, to keep exploring.
Mhm.
So very, very much would recommend.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
So yeah, we're gonna move on to Mystic Pillars. Goutham, I'm gonna switch over, so excuse the the awkwardness as I try to do this the best way. So Goutham, if you could intro yourself a little bit and then tell us a little bit about the game. I'm going to go back to an easier puzzle.
Oh, that
Hey
one
everyone,
stumped
my
me
name is
too.
sorry.
Sorry.
Hey everyone, my name is Gautam, and I'm the founder at Holy Cow Productions. That's our gaming studio, and Mystic Pillars has been a recent release on Steam, PC, and iOS and Android on mobile. And yeah, so Mystic Pillars is a story-based puzzle game that is set in ancient India.
Yeah, so people can't hear this, but the the text that we're seeing now is read in a non-English language. Could you tell us a little bit about the language and why you made the choice to have it
Mhm.
read out to us in that way?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so when we decided to set the story in ancient India, we felt like it would be great to push a local language out. So the language that you're hearing right now is called Kannada. That's the language of our locality and the state here. And we felt like it would be more authentic and also a platform to push local languages as well.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit more about the inspiration. I love puzzle games, and it's always really interesting to hear like what creates the foundation for just things that stump my brain.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of it has been so we wanted to reimagine a traditional Indian board game. It's called Aliguli Mane. There's a more popular version from Africa, which is called Mancala. So it's basically a wooden board game with a lot of slots and seeds in them, and you have to move the seeds around. So we were like, how can we reimagine this and make sure we can play it digitally? But over the course of the million iterations, it just became a different game altogether. But you can see the core of that, the core elements where you see the pillars and gems. So each pillar has about 16 slots and they have gems in them. But we have our own rules of how you can move the gems around.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the I'm on the easier puzzles because there are definitely some puzzles where I'm like, I don't understand what is it. What do I do next? Can you tell us a little bit about the structure that you guys have been building with these specific rules?
Uh-huh. So just before that, I'll quickly explain the rules. So you
Yes.
can move gems from one pillar to the other. And the way that works is you first choose your source pillar and then your destination pillar. And based on the distance between these pillars, that's the number of gems that would actually move. So there's a little bit of math involved in it. And you have to figure out, because you have only a limited number of moves there, right? So you have to figure out, how do I get to that winning condition in that many moves? So
Yeah. So yeah, like I guess tell us a little bit more about why, like yeah, I guess the puzzle structure and how you guys came up with it. Because yeah, even with the couple of levels I've played, I can definitely see how it could get crazy hard.
yeah. So right now, I think you're seeing just the linear puzzles. So you get different formations of the pillars and different like one way the paths to the pillars and stuff. So we have those different types of puzzles there in terms of the formations, in terms of some simple rules. Uh, yeah, but sorry, I were you asking about like the how did we come up with the puzzles themselves?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the first thing we did was to write the puzzle solver code. And so any kind of puzzle that you give to the system, it tells you how to solve it. And then we sat down and handcrafted these puzzles and saw, like, we had a couple of rules that we sat down with and we decided that's fun for players. So we worked that kind of backwards and tried to put them into puzzles.
Yeah. Something I also really love about the the game is the art style, and in particular when we have those little story scenes. Could you tell us a little bit more about that process and the choices that you've made there?
Yeah, sure. So when we first decided that it should be a story-based puzzle game, we wanted to bring that element of ancient India. So we started with choosing a particular dynasty in the history, and we started taking inspiration from the kings and queens of that time. And that's how you see the names of the villages and all the village that it's based on. Like here you see Hosapete, which was a place of all the agriculture, you know. So
Hmm.
a lot of it is based on that.
Yeah. Did you find any particular obstacles or challenges as you were creating this game?
I think what you're seeing right now on screen, the map was our biggest challenge because on paper and on design, it sounded really nice that as you solve puzzles, the map and kind of the village that you see also starts getting green. But the implementation, we found out the hard way that was a lot harder.
Yeah, I think the the other thing as I fail this puzzle because I don't remember what I did before, um, is that I think there's certain puzzle games that really punish players for not figuring it out first or not doing it in X or Z amount of ways. I appreciate that that this game doesn't kick me out and force me to do every puzzle from the beginning or things like that. Why did you make kind of those choices? Why isn't there, I guess, like, like an aggregating points counter or something like that?
Yeah, so in fact, in the beginning, we did think about having a star system and like having the perfect and just like an okay system to solve the puzzles. But as we were solving the puzzles, we figured out that solving it in the least number of moves was the most exciting thing for people. From a lot of playtesting, that's what we figured out, and that's why we chose to just have one way, no pressure on solving the puzzles except the number of moves.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I greatly appreciate it as somebody who really enjoys puzzle games, but yeah, sometimes you get stuck and you have to like be okay with leaving the game and coming back.
Yeah.
Um, was there anything that as you're building and having it play tested that you found really surprising from the feedback?
Yeah, I think one of the main things was like exactly what I said. Like when we said we were going to give you extra moves so you can just maybe solve it in an easier way, people started feeling like the whole mechanic was boring because you could just move gems like randomly and solve the puzzle, right?
Hmm.
So the moment that we added the minimum number of moves that you have to solve in, that was when people started thinking more about how
Hmm.
they can like ration their moves.
Right. Yeah. Um, cool. What? Yeah. I guess is there something in particular that you think you can tell the audience about, like why out of all the puzzle games they should try Mystic Pillars?
I think the concept is very unique. It's a math-based spatial puzzle game, and it's also set in ancient India. So, and on top of that, you're going to hear all the story in Kannada, which is a language you might have never heard before. So, I think just for that unique experience, you should try out Mystic Pillars.
Awesome. Thank you. Um,
Thank
all right, we're gonna move to our last game. Um, I'm just gonna awkwardly go to Steam. Um, but Jenny, if you could just introduce yourself a little bit, and then a little bit about this demo that I will be pulling up.
Yeah, so hi everybody. My name is Jenny Windom, and I'm the communications manager for Rose City Games. And we are publishing Garden Story, which is being developed by solo dev Picogram. And we're super, super excited to be here showing off Garden Story because it's a game. I think what's been really nice is like there's a lot of games about community and kindness, and Garden Story is one of those where we're trying to unify a community that's been sort of broken apart by a series of just various tragedies and unfortunate events. And you take on the role as the guardian of this community, and you'll be combating invasive rot and getting to know fellow neighbors and inhabitants and working together to rebuild. So yeah, it's all about sort of kindness and community and trying to do the right thing, basically.
Yeah. So I guess Picogram, the developer, what was it about their original pitch that you guys loved and wanted to support?
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, the art style is incredibly striking. I think what Picogram has done so well is they've drawn from that inspiration of loving food and loving lush greenery and really strong attention to detail, and has captured that in this game so wonderfully. And what also we found really striking was not only this blend of really nostalgic feeling gameplay mechanics, where I think folks who are maybe familiar with sort of the Super Nintendo Zelda game, that sort of action RPG feel, that's very present here. But we loved the take that Pico had on the idea of heroism and what does it mean to be a hero? What does it mean to perhaps be a hero within one's community? So not going away to save the world, but staying where you are needed and helping inspire those around you to also take action. So I think between the art style and just the really fun mechanics and then that theme, we just absolutely fell in love.
Yeah, I mean, it's only the demo that's available, correct?
Yes. So if folks wanted to go onto Steam, which is a games platform, they can play this demo that you're playing for free. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. I definitely want to echo the art style. I think, a lot of times when people think video games, they think, really, really shiny, slick. And there's something, between all three of the games that we're showcasing tonight that is very cute and visceral and textured. The other thing about Garden Story that I love is the dialogue. As somebody who does communications, what do you think is like the most, I guess, like interesting or characteristic about some of this dialogue that Picogram has put in?
Oh gosh, I think what's really incredible is this blend of just the way that the visuals and dialogue help convey the personality of each character. I think what's so amazing about pixel art in as a whole is there's so few bits of information compared to other like more 3D style games. And so those smaller bits of information have to convey a lot more, and the words have to convey a lot more to get folks to feel really immersed in the world. And so what Pico has done with a lot of the dialogue is just infused so much personality, and on top of that has layered really great like facial expressions on each of these characters to make that like even that map get moment where there's like a little squint, a little bit of excitement. And I think that combination of just like attention to detail again in the visuals and just really funny, genuinely funny dialogue and personality with some of the characters, they do such a great job. There's a line from one of the characters that you get to meet in this demo later on, and it's from this big like winter squash, calabasa. And they say something along the lines of like, oh, does my girthy monolithic form intimidate you? And that line just gets me every time because it's so like you just immediately get a sense of what this character is like. So I think Picogram does a great job with that.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit more about just how this process has been working with Picogram? Are they a one-man team, or are they working with some other developers and artists for this project?
Yeah, so what's really cool, we're a studio based in Portland, Oregon, and Picogram also is based in Portland. So in the before times, we were all actually in the same office, which was really exciting. So as publishers, we were able to have Picogram in the office with us developing, and they do pretty much everything except for the music. And Graham Nesbitt is the composer and sound designer, and he does an incredible job. Folks who get the chance to play the demo will be able to hear some of the tunes that he's crafted. And I believe he has also come down to Portland as well. So what's really exciting is now we're all in the same area. And communication's all online now, which we've worked through. We've gotten through, I think, most of the learning curve for that. But yeah, it's been really exciting. That's the first game that we've published as well. So it's been great to have Picogram also learning with us in this process.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you mentioned the music, and I will tell everybody that it is equally as cute as the visuals. It definitely has like a slight nostalgic vibe to it. Something that was really striking to me, and partially because it's a demo, is that we don't really know what kind of set off this situation in the game. Could you maybe, I don't want to say spoil, but could you maybe kind of give us a little bit more context for the story world and why suddenly our character is kind of in charge of fixing things?
Yeah. So without giving too much away, because part of that fun is discovering exactly how Concord gets into the position of guardian, but I can speak a little bit more to the situation in the world of the Grove, which is the universe in this game. I think Elderberry's dialogue, the Elderberry that you talk to before you come up to Autumntown, they discuss how these villages throughout the Grove once were united, but with the rot that's been coming up, they don't really know where from. The rot has caused a lot of damage and disconnect, and so really the thing that has started a lot of this action in the game and started the story as our protagonist enters it, Concord the Grape, is this idea that things have been disconnected and fruits, the characters in the games they haven't really communicated across regions. And so not only are they fixing individual villages, but trying to unite the community as a whole.
It's such a lovely idea. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier about, there may be things that we can be solving or adventuring within our own communities. To wrap up, because I think the demo is going to make me go to bed, which smart. Is there anything else that your team is like working on or that you're excited about when it comes to this kind of like community stuff?
Well, the community for Garden Story has been so wonderful. I think what's really nice about just these more wholesome games in general they tend to draw people who also have a lot of that same mentality. So what's been really exciting is we just had like a fan art contest, and people were so excited to create artwork around the game. And what I'm particularly excited about is to find ways to connect some of what we do just as a studio to this game's message of how can we help our community? How can we really not just put our actions into play here? And so I'm excited to be able to do that as we continue working with Garden Story and with Picogram.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go to bed. Cutely, my legs disappear and I go to bed.
Such a cute animation.
And then let's just have a kind of conversation with all of us, which I'm really, really excited for because, like this is our first time as a film festival, like really entering the video game space. And a lot of the reason why is because there is so much storytelling that happens in video games, and the same way that our community might not know how much work gets put into your favorite film and TV shows, they definitely don't know how much work goes into a video game. So the question for all of you first is, what got you inspired to get into video games at all? GJ, if you want to start.
Let me think. It wasn't, when I started, it wasn't a viable kind of path, or I never knew it was something you can do as a career or anything like that. I mean, when I first started working in the industry, at the time, I just needed a job at the time. But I found the challenges really interesting, the design challenges, as well as being able to collaborate with very smart, very dedicated, people. And I think it allowed me to be a better creative person myself. Yeah, I don't know if that really answers, but
Yeah. I guess, like, what was your background before you got into games?
So in undergrad, I studied fine arts and mathematics. And then I went to grad school much later, where I did like it was like a creative technology kind of master's program. And so it kind of lended itself to being able to do creative work, but also more technical work. And game development is a weird combination of that. And so it allowed me to pursue and explore those kind of challenges more.
Yeah. Goutham, how about you?
Yeah, sure. I think at the risk of sounding old, I would say when I played Prince of Persia, the first game, that's when I knew like I wanted to play more games. But as I played more games, and Hitman was one of the first games that like just inspired me to like think about how the games are being made. So I kind of had a natural journey because I did my bachelor's in engineering for computer science, and then I pursued my master's in entertainment technology. And after that, I worked at Ubisoft in Barcelona for a while, and I really wanted to move back and start my own studio. So that's what I did in 2014.
Amazing. And Jenny, how did you get into this?
I kind of stumbled my way into the industry a little bit. Before games, I was a middle school and high school teacher, and I had been creating content for games as a hobby on the side. And through a series of events, decided to make the transition from teaching full time into creating content for games, and through that began working with communities and social media in games. And what's been really wonderful and what's kept me in the space is not simply just the fact that I love games. I really enjoy the narratives and the ways that they can tell stories compared to other mediums. But I really love the intersection that I found between things that I've learned to create community within a classroom and things that I found work really well in creating communities online, specifically within game spaces.
Yeah, I mean, I think the community aspect of this industry and of video games is so important, so key, and I think often overlooked, especially by people who don't play games normally. So in particular, Chloe, who is the programmer who actually put together this panel and put together all these games, we had been talking about of trying to figure this out, and we like saw game devs of color and was so inspired by it, and also a lovely shortcut for us digging through games. GJ, can you talk a little bit about how you created this really, really great community that Jenny and Goutham are also a part of now?
Oh yeah. So there's 6 organizers who work together. I guess I started got involved like a year after, or a year or two after the first event, but I think it started in a room with a group of people who was like, well, maybe there's something we'd like to see some change going on in our industry, and maybe we need to start by having a conversation amongst ourselves. And it kind of grew from there. And I guess I should preface that, like, there are a lot of amazing developers, games, communities around games that are very overlooked, that we want to highlight and acknowledge, not just because they happen to be devs of color, but because they're excellent games that are out there. It's just they need a platform. They need a platform because the usual way of getting through is usually not the best way for them. And so the spaces that we kind of create together are purely meant to elevate and really amplify these, like, I don't know, amazing creators that are out there and amazing people.
Yeah, I mean, I think anything content wise, it's hard to understand the scope of the people involved. And I think these past couple of years in regards to, representation and diversity has been revealing how important it is to have, people that don't all look the same involved. Goutham, you were part of a larger company. How important has it been for you to be a part of more diverse teams, but also now that you've started your own company to keep that in mind?
Yeah, definitely. I think that was one of the main reasons behind Mystic Pillars as well. We knew how underrepresented India is, and also, like I said, like the language of our city. And also, I think one of the points you were mentioning, like how people look in the game. So, like all the characters in our game look very realistic in terms of color and in terms of structure to how the kings and queens used to be. So it's quite important for us as well to keep that in the games.
Yeah, and Jenny, you were talking about community. What are some things that you've seen work and not work, and maybe some things that you do as a team to make sure that you're fostering a safe place, both for developers, but also for people of color or people of marginalized communities to participate in the video game industry?
That is a great question. So one thing that I found just in any community space is just first and foremost to have really clear expectations, especially in online spaces where folks aren't able to interact with one another in person and get a lot of those physical cues or even like tonal cues that happen in conversation. It's really important to have clear expectations on how you would like folks to behave with one another, with the developers, and really just hold true and stand by those expectations. I think one thing that, especially for smaller teams or smaller studios, it can be hard sometimes when you have folks in your community and they're talking and you maybe want to keep them around, but they are maybe not the best members of the community, but you have this feeling like you should keep them because you're a small studio and you want to make sure you don't make anyone feel bad or anything like that. And so one thing that I've learned just in life is don't be afraid to let people know when something they do is not within those guidelines and take further action if needed, if they decide they want to continue that behavior. I think that's kind of the biggest lesson in terms of creating communities, whether it's in the workplace or online within folks who are enjoying the games that we're creating.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are just good life rules to have. And it sometimes is a little shocking that like we don't say those rules out loud sometimes for people to acknowledge. So this audience that we have right now is not a video game first community. If you were trying to convince like somebody from this audience to, pick up your game, or pick up any kind of smaller indie game, what would you tell them? GJ, if you want to start.
Oh my goodness.
The pitch.
I mean, I guess we can plug our own studio, The Sheep's Meow. We make a lot of like small games. We have Exposure that's coming out. But I think for if anyone wants to try out stuff, there's a lot of like platforms out there. The games nowadays, it's like a really great time in that you're able to connect and find developers through like Twitter or go on itch and find a lot of free games. Because I mean, our tastes are all really different, right? But now we have these amazing platforms where developers from like everywhere around the world, all different kinds of backgrounds, are releasing games. And so it's hard to name one, but I would encourage anyone to like go to these platforms, Steam or itch, and look at some of the tags. Even like you can go by like feelings, or even like if I'm feeling really sad, be like sad, look up the sad tag and find a game that resonates, and let's be sad together or something.
I feel that. Goutham, what would you tell to somebody who doesn't normally play video games why they should maybe pick up Mystic Pillars?
Yeah, for sure. I think for one, if you're talking about Mystic Pillars, it's not a typical game. So it's a story-based puzzle game, like I've said before. So that could be something you can pick up and try. But in general, I would say, like, if you've not been playing games, you should give it a try. Like, even if you want to just pick up your mobile and like go to the store and try a couple of games, there's a ton of like awesome games, and a lot of these indie games are also on mobile. So you could definitely try them out.
Cool. Jenny?
Yeah, I think for Garden Story specifically, I think what's really great is, and actually I think Mystic Pillars and Trunk Brook all have this as well, where there are games now that afford time to players and the flexibility to not have to feel like they have to do action at every moment of the game. And I think that's a really great attribute that anyone looking into playing games for the first time or jumping back into games after a long time, like finding games that afford you that flexibility that you might need in terms of processing the action happening on the screen is great. But I would love to second what Goutham was saying about mobile games. I think what's really incredible is if you're not sure if you want to jump in, most everyone will have a phone that can access a game in some form. And those typically are really accessible in terms of just using touchscreen to play the game. And many of them, I think, also have minimal, or depending on the game, but I've noticed there tends to be less reading in many games because, again, the smaller UI focus, there's a lot less focus on strong narrative. But honestly, there's also strong narrative games on mobile too. So that's actually a moot point. But I would say, yeah, trying something on mobile, trying itch where the games are free. There really is something for any mood or taste out there. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. If there are any questions for any of our panelists, please put it in the chat and we'll ask them. But for all of you guys, what is something that you're like excited for, whether it's in the game space or not, for I guess the rest of 2020? If it's in the game space, that's I think more on theme, but I don't want to assume that everybody's playing all the time.
I think it's really exciting to see like wholesome games, or I think they also call them cozy games. There's been quite an explosion. I know, Jenny, you're pretty involved
Yeah.
with that, and just like games that require, or not require, but like have themes of kindness and just being nice to one another. I don't know. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I have I think the game in my Steam library that I've put the most time in is Kind Words.
Oh my gosh, I love that game.
That is when people are like, "What are you playing?" and I'm like, I'm playing a game where I write letters to people.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Why don't you just write letters to people?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't have a good reason." Goutham, anything that you're excited for, either in the video game space or outside?
A little more mainstream is the new generation consoles coming out, so definitely excited to check them out.
Oh, the big squares. Jenny, anything for you?
I think for me, I'm always just excited to see what's coming next in terms of games. I think, kind of going off of what GJ was saying, I think what's really cool is we are at the point where games are really starting to explore a lot more nuance in terms of the feelings they're trying to evoke. Because we have like the really intense like action games, horror, and even like there's the wholesomeness that and the coziness that we're really diving into, I think, in the last year or so. But I'm really looking forward to I think Spiritfarer is a great game in the sense that it really evokes this bittersweet feeling that not many games often capture. And I've only just now seen games starting to play with really nuanced emotions and nuanced sort of feelings. And that's super exciting to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what makes us as a film festival really excited to keep hopefully
Yeah.
showcasing games because, what we do is wanting to showcase the best in indie storytelling and exploring complicated and challenging emotions sometimes. And I think we're at the point where we would be remiss if we didn't include video games as they continue to get, deeper into whether there be cozy feelings or not so cozy feelings. So I just want to thank you guys so much for being a part of this panel and for letting us have access to these games. Sheep's Meow, Rose City Games, Goutham, and your studio. I think this will hopefully be the start of more conversations. Thank you for giving us the chance as a film festival to have you guys.
Thank you.
Everything that I played today is available in some capacity. So Garden Story is on Steam as a demo, and then Mystic Pillars and Trunk Brook are readily available for you to play. I see somebody in chat has already just told us that they downloaded Mystic Pillars on mobile to play. So thank you so much.
So
Please
good.
tell all your friends to also do the same. Any last words before we call it a night?
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been really, really great. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for watching. It's the end of day 2. We have many more days left. I can't do the math anymore, but day 3 tomorrow is going to be our first full day. So we'll be back bright and early in the afternoon with some Q&As with some of our filmmakers. Hope to see y'all then. Thanks and have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh.